Today we're digging into a really fascinating chapter from the book series The Wars of Light and Darkness. We're going to be looking at Chapter 2, the Eschatological Oracles of the Prophets, and uncovering a lost theology that might just change how you see ancient history.
So, to really get a handle on the prophecies from this time, you have to picture a moment of absolute crisis, a time when it really felt like the world was ending, which, as it turns out, gave rise to some of the most powerful and mysterious visions in all of history.
Yeah, this whole story, it doesn't start with some big victory or moment of glory. Nope. The prophecies we're about to explore were literally born from the ashes of a fallen kingdom. I mean, just try to imagine that for a second. Your entire world, your whole way of life just gone. That was the brutal reality for the kingdom of Judah. Their sacred land, their leaders, everything wiped out. The nation's elite were captured and dragged off to Babylon. It was a catastrophe on every single level you can imagine. And this famous line, it just perfectly captures that deep, deep sadness of the exile. But here's the thing, it's right in the middle of all that despair that the prophets start talking about this incredible redemption, a Messianic Age that wouldn't just restore what was lost, but would completely transform the entire world.
Okay, so this is where it starts to get really, really interesting, because this promise of redemption, it came with a huge puzzle, a contradiction that's had scholars scratching their heads for centuries. The prophets were all pretty clear that a great king would rule from a new Jerusalem. But the question was, who exactly was that going to be? Because when you really start digging into the texts, it feels like they're giving two totally different answers.
So you've got this core conflict, right? On one hand, you have prophecies that say God himself, Yahweh, is going to be the king over everything. But then, on the other hand, you've got these prophecies saying a human, a descendant of King David, is going to rule. So, which is it? What's going on here?
Right, so how can both of those things be true? Well, according to the Wars of Light and Darkness, the answer is hiding in plain sight, in a kind of forgotten theology, an ancient way of seeing the world that makes this whole paradox just disappear.
And this is it. This is the key. It's this concept called sacral kingship. See, back before the exiles, the belief was that when a king from David's line was anointed, he wasn't just some politician. He went through this mystical transformation. He became a divine son of God, and he had this symbiotic unity with God. So YHWH and his anointed weren't two separate things. They were like one integrated being.
And check this out, because this verse is basically the smoking gun. It's from the account of Solomon's coronation in Chronicles, and it says the people worshiped God and the king, like in the same breath as a single act. The whole puzzle just dissolves when you realize that for them, there was no contradiction. Of course God was ruling, and of course his divine son was ruling on his throne. It was the same thing.
Okay, so if this idea was so central, why does it feel so hidden today? Why is there even a paradox to begin with? Well, the Wars of Light and Darkness makes a pretty bold claim. It wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up. So, the book points its finger at this group known as the Deuteronomists. During the exile, these guys basically launched a massive rewrite of Israel's sacred history. Their goal was to create a more streamlined, less mythological religion. And part of that meant getting rid of this whole messy idea of a divine king.
And you can see their fingerprints all over the text when you compare different accounts. In the Book of Kings, which they edited heavily, Solomon sits on the throne of David. It's a political, hereditary thing. But in Chronicles, which the source argues is an older, less edited version, where does Solomon sit? On the throne of YHWH, the throne of God himself. I mean, that one little change shows a massive shift in theology.
But here's the really cool part. Even though these reformers tried to completely erase the idea of a divine king, they didn't quite pull it off. It never totally disappeared. It just went underground. Yeah, this older covenant tradition, as the book calls it, it got pushed to the sidelines for sure, but it was carefully kept alive by certain groups, people who held on tight to the old ways.
And this is where it all snaps into focus. This old idea of a divine Messiah, a king who is also the Son of God, it became the absolute core belief for groups like the Essenes, and it totally shaped the apocalyptic books of that era. And maybe most importantly, it became the foundation for the theology of the very first Christians.
So all of this leaves you with a pretty wild thought, doesn't it? If a core belief this big could be deliberately hidden and then rediscovered, what other secrets are just waiting to be found in the pages of these ancient texts?
Hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, please like and subscribe for more videos just like it. And for more information, or if you want to grab the full volume for yourself, just hit the link down in the description.